Welcome to the Morning Drift. If you're just waking up, you are right on time for the big conversation. And today we are looking at you in your 20s. But of course, what we're going to talk about affects everybody across all ages, except we're trickling it down to the 20s because I believe in this age group, that's where it's a bit too much. And just like YOLO, yeah, I know you say YOLO, we also have FOMO. All right, the fear of missing out. In the era of, digital platforms where my Instagram looks posh, I have an amazing car, I'm celebrating a lot of the new things. I say this 2022 is my year, and then suddenly I'm already posting amazing, things. I've just bought land. You almost cannot avoid to see how your peers are progressing. All right. Now there are a lot of terms, like, of course, with all due respect, babas, and it's something that is under, the peer groups, and there's some sort of pressure. So most of us are battling the fear of missing out, FOMO. How can you handle it? And as parents are watching, do you know that your children are battling this psychologically? Do you know what has driven certain individuals to something? All right. Could it be this same psychology of FOMO? I am joined by my guest today this morning to shed light and discuss further. Remember, it's a conversation. And I want you from back at home. Are you 21? Are you 20? Are you just turning 20? Are you 29 and you're beginning to scratch your head on how you're going to cross over to 30? The mighty 30. All right. And most of your friends have married, have children. So you're a bit worried, all right? What did I do in my 20s? What did I do in my 20s? So let's have that conversation with you. Ask us your questions, share your concerns. What are you dealing with? What's the fear that you're running away from? And are you able to actually face it? We'll walk with you this morning with my guests on set. Of course, I was very thoughtful, and now I'm honored to have a counseling psychologist for this, because there's no way I would have hacked it alone. We need that expertise. So Bernadette Kimathi, yes, we appreciate you. She's a counseling psychologist and addiction counselor. You want to say good morning?
Good morning. Good morning to you viewers, and welcome to our segment this morning.
Thank you. I know we are not paying for this one, so you can just, each of them watching and want to consult you, please assure them that this is free consultation only on the Look Up TV Morning Drift.
Yes, it is.
And of course, a young man who's been very vocal on, development issues, political issues, but today coming in not only as a political commentator, but as a youth development enthusiast. Habari asubuhi Kennedy.
Mzuri sana.
How are you doing?
I am fine, thank you.
Oh, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to our viewers.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
And I just want us to go straight into the matter of discussion. I would say, as Anki Doris Mbat, I do have certain fears, but the fear of missing out, that I think someone can overcome. But let's talk about this first, psychologically, from where you sit.
Yes.
What is this fear of missing out?
All right. Now, let us just take a journey back into how human beings operate. First of all, the fear of missing out is actually a real fear, an anxiety that stems from our social setup, and an anxiety that is deep-rooted in our human being setup. It's a basic instinct, actually. And fear of missing out actually refers to that anxiety that we feel when we look at our social setup, because human beings are social beings. And by virtue of that, we have the need, and actually it is a basic instinct, a human instinct that we have within ourselves to be able to connect with others, to be able to associate with others in order for us to get the information that we require for our own existence. So it is actually a survival instinct when you look at it from a very deep perspective. But coming back now to the fear of missing out is a maladaptive behavior. What I mean by maladaptive behavior is a behavior that can be destructive, because we have this anxiety. And this anxiety actually, from a psychological perspective,
yes,
goes into our brain. And what does it do into our brain? It actually just goes to a part of the brain that is called the limbic system, that is the amygdala. And when it sets in there, it sets the fight or flight mode to every human being.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is how we get that.
That's how it works.
That is how it works.
When you were speaking, I just remembered the Abraham's Maslow. Is the pyramid also contributing to that? Because there's a hierarchy of needs?
Yes, there's a hierarchy of needs, and that expectation that we have, we want to achieve more, and that is, there's nothing actually wrong with that.
Okay.
But sometimes the behavior that is pegged to that sometimes can be destructive.
And I like that you've mentioned the behavior that's pegged to it.
Yes.
I was about to ask Kennedy how old he is, but I'm thinking I shouldn't. However, being where he is at with the years of experience in his life, did you ever at one point in your life experience this fear of missing out?
Hey, let me start by acknowledging that I'm happy to be in class. No, I like being in places where I live with some, so I may not be able to use the same terms.
That's acceptable.
I'm trying to be as layman as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone goes through these stages. At some point, because of course you are not an island as a human being. At some point, as you walk out there, your eyes are open, your ears are open, you see, you feel. And whatever you feel, there are times, there is that, the natural feel in us to associate. We want to associate with good things. We want to become the good things. So at every stage as you walk, there are things you see that you wish to become.
Yes.
Now the difference is the mentorship or what you've been civilized into, as far as your reaction to those things you see matter. So you realize that it's okay to aspire, it's okay to desire all those things, but now you also need to understand that those things that become the perfect things or the good things they are a result of some effort.
All right. All right.
And until you understand what was invested in that what you want to become, your aspiration might have a negative impact on you. Because at the end of the day, it's usually said, don't aspire to be like someone whose journey you don't understand. Because then you start walking a path whose consequences and whose steps you don't understand. So at the end of the day, this is something that is very normal.
All right.
But as a society, it becomes negative when we embark on journeys for which we are not prepared for.
I like it. I like it when you say that, because as we are talking this particular morning, a lot of youth are in that place where they're not sure which direction to take. Like you're saying, it can break you, it can build you, depending on your reaction and your responsive techniques. I'm glad Bernadette is here. And there is a concern now on, fine, you guys are saying this is normal, but people are not able to place themselves. Am I experiencing FOMO? What are the examples of FOMO?
All right.
And when we talk about seeing and feeling, right now in the digital era, there's a lot of Instagram. Even KRA was saying we will tax you on what we see. All right. And social media has, of course, given so much pressure to people, especially people in their 20s. As we're speaking, if you're watching, let us know if this is true from back at home. We are live on Facebook. Ask your questions as well. Confirm that what we're talking about is actually affecting you. Let's help you overcome your specific FOMO. Now, the examples of FOMO, so they can place themselves.
Yes.
Especially in your 20s. We're looking at FOMOs in your 20s. Just walk that journey with us. There's a 20-year-old, there's a 25-year-old, they say midlife crisis? Or we midlife Nikani? Not yet. Quarter life. Yeah. Then there is the 29, all these ones. Just walk us through the examples of the FOMOs they might be going through.
All right. Now let's look at the years of the 20s. The 20s are really a vibrant time for young people. And seeing what is happening around the young people is that there is an avalanche of information that is coming their way. It was not that way when I was growing up, because I belonged to the Wahengas, if the people call it that. Those years, there wasn't the avalanche of information that is coming our way. Now, information has been passed on from years to years and from generation to generation. But once we look at what is happening right now, there is those things that are coming our way that we are not able to sieve. For example, a young person is not able to sieve information. For example, there was a party that was going on, and assume the three of us were going to that party, but somehow I was not able to make it into that party. Then we come back for a lunch, and all you people are talking about is the party and what's happening in that party. What happened, the funny things that happened, what is happening to me all this time. You're discussing all this information. I'm feeling left out. So what am I likely to do? I'm actually likely to go on and find that information. And what happens when we start looking at that information? We become engrossed. It's like we have this compulsive behavior. Now, those are some of the things that come out of this kind of information that we have all around us. We become very compulsive. We become stressed. Actually, we have so much anxiety to fit in because we want to be there. We want to engage, we want to become like the rest of us. Because,
fit in.
Yes, we do not want to be left behind. Who wants to be left behind? Nobody.
Yes.
So we want to fit in, we want to become, we want to be with it. You know, we want to have the things that people are posting. And when we look at the posts that are going around, I stand beside a very posh car, and you're thinking, oh, I'm 20 years old, and I'm thinking, what is wrong with my life? I mean, really? People can go to such restaurants. Actually, they traveled. How comes I'm not traveling? All that causes you a lot of anxiety. A lot of anxiety. And also there's that compulsivity. I have to post, I have to be seen.
Get likes.
Yes, get the likes, get the followers, you know? And some of these things actually, young people forget that that moment when I'm posting, I am at my very best. I'm dressed my best. I'm with the best people around town. I'm with who is who. I take pictures and I post. But that is not my life. Find me at home with Crocs and PJs. That is my real life. That is the real me.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're looking at how the social media has put you in a position where you create certain FOMOs.
Yes.
Some of these are actually created psychologically from,
Yes.
like you said, a setup.
Yes.
Now, I'm coming into the gender perspective, and I'm glad that Kennedy is here. And we've had situations, and I'm glad that she's also here, counseling psychologist, where men find it harder to deal with some of these FOMOs. Because of the societal pressure, you want to be a provider. At some certain age, we are hoping. Some are now head of families because their parents are absent for men. Now you have to be a head of family, get a certain kind of job, your friends are in certain status. Someone has I would use the word baby mama somewhere, quote unquote, allow me. And you're thinking, why is everyone moving so fast? How do men deal with these fears of, missing out?
I would say men are greater victims of FOMO because of the society in which, because of our cultural orientation where men are known to be the big boys and the providers. So you realize that it's much more difficult for a man because the responsibilities that are vested on a man naturally by our own cultures even put more pressure on the men. So as a man, personally, I believe it's a personal choice. And as much as we may talk of mentorship and how we grew up, personally, I believe you get to an age where you have to take responsibility for your own life. But unfortunately, because of, she's mentioned social media, you realize that because of the availability of information that has not been verified, you realize that people are pushed into corners where they end up living what I call comparative lives.
All right.
Comparative lives are situations where, like you said, your age mates are married, they are driving, your schoolmates and stuff like that. So you realize that that feeling starts getting into you slowly. And that's when you realize now people start chasing races that are not meant for them in life. Because everyone has their own special race that they are supposed to win. But the moment you allow other people's life to distract your very own life, then you realize you are no longer living your life. And that's how most men crash. Because it's a situation of me wanting to be like him without necessarily knowing what he's going through.
And the effort.
Like she said, most of Instagram life are the best moments. And sometimes they never even repeat themselves.
Yes.
You realize some of these people, probably I posted a photo with you on Instagram. There's a possibility I may never post another photo What we don't realize is that these are once in a lifetime moments, the best moments. I'll post something here after we are done, you know, in line with what I'm doing. So personally, I believe it's up to you as a person. Once you become an adult, stop blaming your parents. You know, there is information. And you know, the funny thing is that all these people know what is happening. But there is a way you progressively sink into that life or state where you start seeking external validation.
All right.
Because when you start seeking external validation, that's when you want to look like the rest. At that point, when you want to look like the rest, you no longer have the fear of missing out. You've already missed out.
All right. And as you're speaking, I did some research and I found out that there are certain questions I hope you will confirm or disagree. You would want to ask yourself as you're trying to figure out yourself when it comes to FOMO. Do I really need to be there or attend this? You know, do I really want it? Or is it just I should be there? What am I really potentially missing out on if I miss to actually, you know, if I miss this opportunity? Like you have said, I'm trying to run someone's race, but is it for me? You know, and also what else can I say yes to by saying no to this? I don't know how you can put this in perspective. Do people in their 20s check on these few things that I have listed here? Or how then can you overcome the fear of missing out?
All right. Let me say at this point that some young people do not know any other way of living. What I mean is this, is that they have come into a system that they have like that avalanche of information. Their way of living has been somehow, you know, molded by what is happening around their society. So it is true, all these questions, young people need to answer them, but they have to become self-aware.
All right.
So self-awareness is really key for a young person. When you're talking about people in their 20s, you're talking about people who have just come into employment or just leaving school or just in the university. That is the age we are talking about. 20 to 25, they have just left university, or if they didn't go, if they went to these other colleges, they are probably ahead of the others. They are probably already earning a living. But now, discovering who you are, you know, just introspecting about what are my goals. I mean, am I going to always be shaped by what others are saying about me? Or am I going to become a man or a woman of my own self?
All right.
How do I become and how do I come into being of who I really am or who I really want to be? Now, those questions that you have right there are some of the questions that they need to ask themselves, because in the journey of self-discovery, there are crucial questions that sometimes we need to ask ourselves. Who am I? What are my goals? And what am I doing right now that can contribute to the goals that I need to achieve in life? And apart from this information that is coming my way, some of it might actually be very useful, because we cannot sometimes, we actually cannot exist with the presence of others. We need to network. But to what level are we networking?
All right.
Are we allowing ourselves to have time to ourselves and actually formulate our own goals and become our own people? Then we look at, for example, the movie stars, and Hollywood is very famous, and there are so many people, the Kardashians, there are so many actors, and they seemingly have the perfect life. Sometimes the young people live in a bubble. Is it possible for a young person to just burst that bubble and ask themselves, that is the Kardashians, yes. How about me? Yes, they have, you know, for the ladies, they have the perfect body, they have this, they have
perfect complexion.
Perfect complexion. So we want to go out and become like them. But the need to become like them, you need to ask yourself, is it necessary? Can I become I? You know, Lupita Nyong'o actually brought a good perspective of what an African woman is. She didn't need to change her complexion. She just became who she is and pursued her passion. So, you know, looking at such models, we want to look at them and maybe choose the right people in the social spaces and actually pick a leaf from their lives.
Pick a leaf
from their lives.
All right.
And also implement that, so that now when we become our own people, we can actually be recognized for who we really are instead of emulating, becoming a mirror of the other person.
I like that when you say who you need to become. You just pick a leaf.
Yes.
Someone said imitation is limitation. All right. So and as you said earlier on, the more you're thinking of missing out, you've actually missed out. So you already limited yourself. I'll read a few feedback because people are watching on Facebook and they have their questions. Of course, send in your questions. We have a psychologist here. We have a youth development enthusiast. And most of the times I hear men don't talk about it, but we want to be here to work with you this morning. What are you dealing with? Do you have a certain fear of missing out on a particular thing? You can also learn from their experiences, how they overcame certain FOMOs. So give us those examples and reach out to us, and they're comfortable to, of course, respond. Joyce Kimari is watching from South Africa still. I thought you have gone to work. Good morning. And of course, Julie Wanyoike says, very informative, Bernadette Nashelo. All right. I can see James Kinwa also says, a lot of social media pressure for us guys in our 20s. FOMO is real. James is saying, and he's a man, and he's saying this for us guys who are in their 20s, FOMO is real. So young people are actually dealing with fears of being, of course, missing out. Carol Kahinga says, my girl, doing her thing. Bernadette Nashelo, learning a lot. So you want to say good morning at least to her. She's
good morning. Good morning, Carol. Good morning, Julie. Good morning, our listeners and everybody on FB. We are here to answer your questions.
And of course, Edwin Kipkirui, good morning, saying great conversation. As we're walking through this time, now of course there's also the fear of missing out. It's an electioneering period. And for a long time when we highlight these stories, we are talking about the youth are being used. The youth are being swept into, violence. But you wonder why it's such a crowd. You wonder why there's so many youth, and we can hardly tell why the crowd mentality is playing part. Could this be an aspect of FOMO? Because now you're here, a political commentator, you're also an aspirant. Is this linked? Because we're hoping we can solve this before we even hit the ballot.
The first thing I would like to point out is that God gave everyone 24 hours in a day. And there are always two options. You either use the 24 hours to live your own life, or use the 24 hours to allow other people to live their lives through you. It's very related to FOMO because most people actually just live other people's lives because you allow unnecessary control. We are talking about FOMO, and FOMO is some form of control, where you've allowed other people's actions, other people's lifestyles to control who you want to become. Because for me, it's about becoming the best version of yourself, not what people want or the society expects.
Yes.
In politics, FOMO is real, both for political aspirants from the top, from the presidential level to the MCA level, to the supporters, to the intellectuals in the political field. There is that desire to associate. And that desire to associate is what pushes people into doing some of the weird things you see on social media.
Right.
You see, sometimes people get overexcited. That is FOMO. And even as we talk about the teenage, the young ones.
Yeah, the 20s.
Before we focus on the 20s, we also have even adults who are still affected by that. But let's come back to the 20s.
Yes, please.
The 20s, you are in a situation where, unfortunately, there are people, like I said, don't aspire to become someone whose path you don't know, and whose circumstances that made them you don't understand. So you realize that there is that crowd mentality. And that crowd mentality is informed by that desire to be part of, not to be.
To be part of.
Not to be.
All right.
So you realize that the young people are doing everything they can, even at the expense of their own lives sometimes, to be part of, which is very dangerous because in the end, it doesn't result in the noble citizens that we expect, even for the youthful aspirants. You realize that sometimes they even end up being the boogie men and women. They end up being the dirty players for the big boys that they want to associate with. All that everyone has that aspiration. And you realize for the youthful ones, everyone will tell you, I must be on the table.
All right.
I must be on the table. What they don't understand is the path to the table.
The path.
So what they think is the path to the table is not. And that's why most of them crash along the way. And even for those who get to that table, they never realize the purpose and value of being on that table. All that is caused by FOMO. Because this FOMO, the political FOMO now, let me call it that way, exerts some pressure and creates a bubble in you that makes you even to sprint when you're supposed to be doing a marathon. Oh. So you realize that everyone is doing a crash program. Everyone is rushing into, that's why when you mentioned about the youth being used. The youth are being used in quotes. Yes. I don't believe they're being used. I just believe they're either using themselves or they are positioning themselves as usees, user versus usee. So that is what because when you sometimes when you present yourself as a victim, there's a probability that you leave that place as having been victimized. Okay. So because of what is in our mind as young people, even when we step out there, we do not present our value that can then be bought or bargained for by those people. Because of that fear of missing out, we find ourselves going to the table or to that rally as beggars.
The anxiety.
To seek attention. Yes. We want to capture the attention. And that's where you even find some of them uttering very unpalatable words. Because of what? Because they didn't go there to sell their value. They went there with the fear of missing out. So once you go there with the fear of missing out, you will do everything to capture the master's attention.
And that is really, really interesting what you have said. But now I want to touch on certain specific fears of missing out. So we can touch on each of these and how to overcome each of them, because I've noticed we've already given a general, preliminary talk on the fear of missing out, and now we are at par, I'm hoping, with the person back at home. So we'll touch each of these and you will help us on how to overcome them, all right? Because seemingly there's like 90% or more of the 20s, people in their 20s dealing with some kind of fear. So we have listed a bit of them. And I want to start with you. Right now, there is the in thing of having a successful relationship.
All right.
And mostly it's like 2% of them are being successful.
Yes.
So how do I deal with my fear of missing out on a successful relationship, let alone a marriage? Yes.
Right, good question.
Both for the women and the men.
And the men.
Yes.
And that's really, really a pertinent issue in our society. I've seen people posting the perfect life, for example, on social media. I want to be seen about this relationship. And there's a tag that once I read about, and it said in Kiswahili that when you guys are having a good time, you have been showing us, even when you break up, please, we are part of this relationship.
They're in-laws.
Yes, we are part of it. I mean, this is us. You've been parading all your relationship issues on the social, so we are actually part of it. Please give us some mind. How did you break up? Now the privacy of your relationship, and it has actually been eroded. Nothing is really private, because we have seen dirty linen of celebrities out there, what they did, what happens, and they fight. And when they fight, they actually take the videos and they give us this. And so now, how do we establish good relationships? Sometimes it's good. It's good to have that privacy. You cannot take, for example, a gentleman or a lady and make her, because that is what I have seen. I take a lady, maybe I am a gentleman, I take a lady, she's Carol, let's just say that. And I want to make Carol to become the model, the epitome, of what a lady should be like. She needs to be dressing in this way. We need to be seen when we're having dinner. Then it is a fallacy around relationship, because what is happening is that we have missed out on the key things that we need to establish relationship one-on-one. When we spend so much screen time, by the way, there's this screen time that people spend, and it becomes an addiction. I know I'm addiction counselor, but still, it becomes an addiction. How much screen time do you have on your phone? You stay up until 2 a.m. So when do you have time to relate with other person? When do you have time to get to know what they like, what they don't like? Because those are some of the things that bond people together. Do we share common, common things that we can
laugh at common things?
Yes. Do we laugh at? Do we have common jokes? Do we like eating certain foods together? What do we like? What are our goals in life? Are they matched? Because sometimes we are totally mismatched, but because this person fits the societal expectation of a man, the man that I want, that's why you see many ladies with sponsors, because those men who have already become, according to the ladies, now they want to fit that, you get. So now they have to find somebody with money, because I am 20. Most likely, my boyfriend who is 21 or 22 really doesn't have money. As in, he's just from college. He's hustling. Probably even he's on pro bono basis. He's still just doing his internship. Why is he supposed to get money? But since I am a young lady and I am beautiful, but this young man is not going to fulfill what I want. I go for the sponsor because he has money he's already made. So we are missing out on building bonding sessions with the people whom we love, and even looking forward to meaningful relationships that can actually lead into marriage. And believe you me, it's a journey that you take, not even 1 year or 2. You might even take a 5-year journey before you finally say, I do. So what happens in between here? Are we forming that relationship? Are we taking time to be actively, engaging in these relationships?
I like that question. And I want to ask Kennedy if we are thinking the same as you're speaking. There are 2 terms you've heard, among the 20s online, especially when you saying the iconic people post their pictures. Kenny will nod if you agree that there is something that they have said mtaachana to. Equal. They say that a lot.
Prime tiers.
Yes. Is it premium tier?
Yes.
And there's also, and as you're talking, I'm seeing that, as Ken said earlier, we are focusing more on actually getting what everyone else has, successful marriages, successful relationships, that we forget the effort and the path.
Yes.
What are your sentiments, Ken, on the same that we have just touched on? Relationship and successful marriages and the FOMO that comes with it.
As a person, and I think from also my experiences, I've learned that before you go into a relationship, you need to first of all sit down and ask yourself, what is my strength? Because for a relationship to succeed, you must have someone who appreciates your strength. If your strength is your brain, then you need someone who appreciates that and has the same or almost the same level, so that you can have the same conversations. You've heard of situations where couples, a man or a woman, they are having a conversation and one feels disrespected when the other one is being very honest. So you need to be with someone that you can tell if you're the kind of person. Let me use this example. If you're Miguna, you need to have someone who understands that that honesty is not arrogance. You're just being yourself. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people go into relationships to look for happiness, to look for love. Instead, people are supposed to go into relationships to give love, to give happiness. You cannot give love if you don't love yourself. You cannot give happiness if you don't have that happiness in yourself. And that happiness comes out of fulfillment. That fulfillment comes out of building value in yourself. Unfortunately, and I'm sorry to say this, we have a lot of empty shells out there looking for shelters. And that's where you find someone walking out there believing that, hey, this woman is very beautiful.
Yes.
She goes out every day. She's very happy.
She posts wine.
If I'm with her, and possibly you'll find a very rich man say, hey, if I get this one with my money, I think we can drive. You'll find another woman, hey, this guy has a good life. I think if I get him, I'll also have a good life. Like I said, forgetting, how he lives his life. Because for real, and I can say this for free, you can go to church and find people singing and dancing, looking happy. But when they leave that church, when they go home, they go into the misery. You go to a bar and find people excited. What you forget is that some people don't go there. Actually, 99% of the people don't go to bars to enjoy themselves, especially the married people. The young ones will go to enjoy themselves, but 99% of the married people go to bars to hide from. So you realize...
Hide from what, Kennedy? They go there to hide from what? Because I want to ask them to confirm your sentiment.
They actually
99%
run away from their relationship mistakes.
All right.
Because they married either the wrong people or married for the wrong reasons.
Okay.
So that in an effort to comply with the society,
to fit
like
in.
we said, as you grow, at 29, I know most women are like, hey, now this time is. At that point, there are those, and I have, you know, these are facts that are out there. You meet people, I'm sure you may even have had friends who say, hey, I'm looking to settle down. You see, the moment you develop that mentality that I'm looking to settle down, then there's a possibility that you may settle down with the next available man or woman. And that's where the mistake starts. You end up seeing a mother of your children in someone who doesn't even qualify to be your friend.
And so you miss out the compatibility.
Because compatibility, for me, is about the ability to relate at the same level. The ability to relate at the same level is dependent on your values, the value system, your cultural orientation, your beliefs. And there is the most important thing about marriage is that your opinion and perception of this institution called a marriage is what keeps it together or breaks it. Because people who, if you respect an institution of a marriage, then look for someone who also respects that. And that's why, for me, I believe in the 21st century, there's nothing wrong with us sitting down and answering some questionnaires. What's your opinion on this?
Okay.
And you know, as we are having that conversation, we are trying to be, you see, when you sit down with a friend, there's a possibility it's easier for you to, so have those honest conversations so that when you get into something.
Child, this message needs to be shared widely, a lot to learn on hashtag the morning drift tuna shukuru. So we'll come back with more, of course. All these things are touching both the boy child and the girl child. And we'll come and talk about infidelity, because infidelity has grown in the last 2 centuries, and 21st century is at its peak because of the fear of missing out. And I wonder, for some reason, I've wanted to hear from my psychologist what it is we feel as young people. What is the psychology behind, you've mentioned sponsors, to get something? There is this purpose and goal. I don't understand it. Maybe you could bring it, you know, into perspective. How FOMO is pushing this young generation, especially those in their 20s, because those are the single moms now we're seeing. If you're just very keen on data, those are the Mpango Akandos, quote unquote, concubines that we're seeing. How is FOMO pushing, you know, this age group to infidelity? Maybe we should just check on that quickly, and then we take a short break.
All right.
Yes.
Now, on infidelity, and especially in the young people. Now, let's just look at how FOMO works.
Yes.
This is how FOMO works, and in the social setup, especially when you're talking about the social media aspect. Now, we are in a group, and there are things that we're discussing in this group. And the ease of you moving out of this group and forming another one is so easy. And everything we do, by the way, has a pattern, and that pattern is also emulated in our own lives as a form of behavior. For example, we 3 are in a group and we have common friends and we're talking about common things. And in this forum, I am actually very informed. I'm coming with the jokes. I'm bringing in so much. I'm the life of the party. But when somebody else comes in, and seemingly, because it is a perception, because I feel like I'm the alpha in this group, but seemingly at some point, I'm not so popular. There's somebody else who's seemingly wants to take that throne. I move into another forum, and it becomes another group, and I go and shine there.
Are these WhatsApp groups as well?
Yes, WhatsApp group, and Twitter, okay. You know, Instagram, everywhere. We join so many other social forum groups. And now that is also translated into the relationships that we form with our peers and with maybe partners that we are leading into marriage, and the breakups, that's when they happen. Because it seems I am a young lady. I have a boyfriend for every function. When we go to Vasha, there is that guy who needs to take me there. He has a Subaru and he has all that, and the Subaru boys and all that. That's the guy for that function, That's the guy for that moment. But then again, I come back to Nairobi, and there's this guy who needs to also pay rent. We are living beyond our means.
Okay.
So I form multiple relationships, not knowing that in forming these multiple relationships, I'm actually fragmenting myself.
All right.
The more I form all these mipango wa kandos, and I'm willing to become a mpango wa kando retrospectively, because there are some needs that I need to meet.
For you to fit in the group.
The fear of not being seen, to be there, to be with it. So I have to form these multiple relationships. There's one who pays rent, there's another one who is the baby daddy, who takes care of the baby, and this baby has needs, so we have this spreadsheet in our minds. This is the amount that I need to get from this one needs to take me out, so there is another. So it's actually a cultural shift. But when we look deeper, what is causing all this? When we look, when we introspect, what is this need that we have to fit in? It is actually
an anxiety.
An anxiety. Yes, an anxiety that we carry around with us.
And I want us to take a short break at that, and I hope that we're all doing our personal checks as we're listening in. And like we said, this is affecting the older generation as well. Is it the fear of, if I die, how big is my will? Yes, or what will they say if I live? We take a short break. Let us know if you understand what FOMO is, the fear of missing out. I'm not seeing enough of your comments and questions yet, so I want to urge you to rush to the social media platforms or on our Twitter handle, and let us have this conversation. This is actually to make each of us think straight, feel better, and ultimately be a better companion or member of that group who now turn things around for the better. You're watching #The Morning Drift, and the big conversation still continues after this short break. All right, our lines are open. I don't want to say so much. I just want to say welcome back, because there are more urgent things to discuss. We're saving our future here. If you're 21 through to 29, this is the conversation you need. If you're parents, please watch through and ask questions on how to properly handle your young, I call them youth, the 20s. Sometimes they don't talk about this, men especially, and women now, and everyone is just trying to get a survival mode. So welcome back on set, Kennedy and Bernadette. People are following and they're really learning so much, especially James. And of course, I want to, encourage James to ask a lot more questions. Edu, Griffith, Jerry, Nasha, everyone else is watching. If your name is Mary, for some reason, I just thought of Mary. Maybe the Spirit is leading me to you. Please ask questions, and whatever it is you're dealing with, we can answer here. Now, the boy child, someone mentioned, is rather silent. Suicide rates are pretty high. All right. And at a certain age, they're expecting that there's a song now that says you want to hang with the big boys. And we wouldn't tell from where we sit what the men actually go through. But I want to talk to one or two who are watching this morning and are dealing with the FOMO, the fear of missing out on the big boys. But they also cannot move out from their parents' house because they're not in that zone yet. How do you deal with this situation if they're watching this morning?
I think one thing we need to understand, one thing that our viewers need to understand is that we live in a society where there's a bit of a gap in both mentorship and parenting. And this gap is carried forward, is manifested at the teenage and in the 20s of the boy child. So you realize that men, naturally we are born to be men and grow up as men. So you realize that many of them don't talk because of various reasons. Some are societal, some are family predispositions, where maybe you find their parental absenteeism, maybe you find single parents. But Let's start with a family situation, because when you're in your 20s, as a person, all I will tell the boy child is speak out. Identify someone. There's nothing wrong with telling your mom what's happening to you. There's nothing wrong with telling your sister, telling your dad, telling you. But as a man, it's also good sometimes to identify, not just, you don't just need to have, you can have, it's good, you can have a father, but it's also good to identify a father figure.
Okay.
Someone you can look up to. When you're identifying that person, it can be a pastor, it can be a teacher, it can be a lecturer, it can just be someone within your field of operation. So it's good to identify someone who can culture you, who can mentor you, someone you can speak to from that man-to-man perspective. Because sometimes you realize the boy child has that problem because most of them either don't talk or don't have someone to talk to. Because even we live in situations where you're told you're a man. So once you are told you're a man, you have to struggle on your own until maybe what the millennials call character development. You find someone to beat you with a character development, that's what they say. So basically, the challenges are out there. But at the same time, it's very important to realize that one of the ways of ensuring that you don't get swallowed by the FOMO is, other than realizing your purpose, is also to ensure that you have people around you.
All right.
Or associate with people who can also help you grow.
All right.
Because at the same time, as long as you continue picking information from the internet about the expectation for you to move out of your house, out of your mother's or your father's or your parents' house, and you do not have the means, then you'll end up in a hole that you can never climb out of. When you find yourself in such a situation, if you're living with your mother, speak out with your mother.
Okay.
Explain your situation. If you have a dad, talk to your dad. If there is someone you can speak out to. Today we have professionals like Benedict. You can reach out to one if you're in a position. We have church systems. We have systems in church where you have groups where you can speak out to. It's good to have forums where you can speak out. Otherwise, as long as we continue hiding and wanting to be men, we will never solve this problem. So as much as we want that independence, we want to move out, we want to do a lot of things, it's good to ensure that we do it in a manner that ensures that we don't crash. And one of the easiest ways is to ensure that you have a mentor.
All right.
I know we have a shortage of that because, like, for example, in the political field, you realize that the people who are supposed to be mentoring us see us as competitors. So we are either their slaves or they crush us. But at the same time, there are spaces where you can still associate and be able to realize your purpose. You don't need to belong to a boys' club for you to be a man, for you to be seen. You can create your own. The most important thing is to be in a position and a place where you are comfortable and peaceful enough to pursue your goals, not based on what the society expects, not based on what your family expects, but based on what you believe you can comfortably afford.
Amazing.
As you move forward.
All right.
But it's very important to engage the people around you.
Okay.
Talk to the people around you.
And
they are
speak
the
up.
ones that are likely to help you move to the next level.
Thank you, Kennedy. Thank you so much. And of course, James Kinyua again says, kuna issue we also face as young guys, toxic masculinity. It makes speaking out a real hurdle. And of course, this morning, we're encouraging you to speak more. All right, speak more. That could also hit away that toxic masculinity. Controller WB, you mentioned Subaru boys. This is one Subaru boy.
All right.
But he's also saying depression ningori, siku hizi kuliko hata corona. And these are two gentlemen talking. And I think that FOMO keeps you from talking. So you're battling things in your head that could ultimately cause depression.
Yes.
Let me now check on the girl.
All right. Now, the girl child,
Yes.
even as much as we speak about the boy child.
Yes.
Somehow it is intertwined because this age group, the 20s, also always, collide in a place called the relationship space, where now, when we look at the girl child, there is so much pressure on the girl child. From the mere fact of just from the way they dress to the way they handle themselves in public, there is this societal expectation that there is a standard they must meet. There is the current fashion that the girls have to. They have to wear their hair in a certain way. They have to have these expensive shoes and handbags. All this are driven actually from FOMO, the fear of, being there and being with it and becoming that which the society expects us to do. Now, in terms of relationship, girls have been known, and even ladies have been known, to stick to toxic relationships where there is actually, battering, and there is violence, and there is, abuse that is going on. No matter to endure so much suffering, so much abuse, so much, so much turmoil emotionally, physically, but they have to stick there. They feel the need to stay there. Why? Because of FOMO, fear of missing out, missing out on a relationship, missing out on that picture, perfect picture that we create in our brains. So, going deeper, we need to look at how we behave, and we need to look at what is really driving us into such kind of relationships. We need to also evaluate. We come back on Monday with a very, with a very severe hangover. But we have to fit in. So we have to be with the crowd. So we go there, we do drugs, we do alcohol, we do all kinds of sexual behavior. Actually, some of it you really don't want to engage, but because your peers are engaged, you find yourself there. Right. You find yourself engaging in those, and because we are different. Some of us have biologically, we are predisposed towards addiction. You start taking alcohol, your friend takes so much, you binge drink and all that, but your friend gets out by Tuesday, he's sober, but you need more. Why? Because you are already falling into the pattern of addiction. And you have taken so much alcohol, but you don't still feel the effect. You want to add some substance, there is some drugs that you add, the speed, the what, the marijuana, all that you want to add so that you can get the high. And when you get high, and you become very popular because you have really, all your guards are down, and you behave the way you want to behave, and people feel, this is the guy. He's the life of the party. We cannot do without, and they constantly supply. Even when you don't have, they will supply you with it because you have to, they need you to be there. So it becomes a vicious cycle, a very vicious cycle that actually destroys us. What I want to talk to the young people, are we really looking at what we are going to, because the 20s are critical times, and even as our politician here has talked about the political scene, what the politicians do, they feed into that fear of missing out. They know the young people want to become, politically correct. They want to also be part of what is happening politically, but they have that fear, so they feed into that fear, and they give them probably some incentives. When he was talking about that, I thought about the Men in Black a while ago. What was that? I mean, what played out in front of us is the fear of missing out, the epitome of it. If we do not get what we want, then this is how we are going to behave.
Oh my goodness, this is
mass psychology.
The mass psychology. You've just
Yes.
touched on it in a more deeper and professional way.
Yes.
And Barbara Tete, allow me to also appreciate, who has just joined us on social media. She says this is real talk here. We say it as it is because ultimately we hope we give certain solutions to just that one viewer, that one 20-year-old who's watching this morning. Now we've now come to the solution table. And this can be answered by either of you. The reason why this conversation is actually an emergency talk is because after your 20 years, I don't know if I'm correct,
Yes.
you're getting into your prime.
Yes.
So this either breaks you or motivates you, challenges you to be a better person. Kennedy, is it possible that the fear of missing out could have a positive side? I don't know. I just need to hear from you.
Yes, it can. Because sometimes in project management, there's something called the critical path, where you realize that there's a project you're supposed to achieve within a specific period, but then there's possibly a shortage of resources or time. So you have to ensure that you use the critical path to achieve the same thing within the specified specifications. What am I saying this? It's because now it depends on how you pursue that. Because in that pursuance, there are opportunities. Because you are walking into, FOMO can drive you into a space where there are opportunities. So when you get there, if you're able to see the opportunities and seize them, then that's how FOMO becomes. Because even, let me use politics as an example. The fear of missing out can push you into like doing what I'm doing. I go on TV, I do all that stuff, and I'm able to seize the opportunities that are there. As opposed to, let me walk my path, let me take the steps. This guy took 30 years, so let me also take 30 years because that's what it takes. Because the opposite, on the other side, there's also the belief that things are only done this way. So you can only do it. So sometimes when you have that and you take it positively and you're able to conceive the opportunities out of that pressure, then you might succeed. And we also know people who have made it through that. So for me, all I would tell the young people is find a balance. There is something that you can achieve, but before you embark on that path, you need to do a reconnaissance survey, do a path analysis. You ask, because what you want to become is what determines the path you follow.
All right.
In that state of FOMO, you can be able to sit down soberly and analyze the situation, look at where you want to go, and be able to pick out the best alternative out of that. So I wouldn't ultimately say that FOMO is destructive, because it's like we talk of positive pressure that sometimes pushes people to achieve the unimaginable.
All right, amazing. It's actually very good to hear that there is a side if you only choose to perceive what is positive, be realistic, and be able to marry that, with a more realistic view to life. Benedict, you are, an expert in how psychology works, and 20-year-olds are not fully independent from their parents, their guidance. You mentioned coaching and mentorship, and maybe you want to touch on the parents now and how they can actually work with these 20-year-olds through this period of, fear of missing out. Because maybe how do you even identify your child is struggling with it? Yes.
All right. Now, that's a critical area, especially because, like you have said, the 20-year-olds have really sometimes not moved out of the house, but they already feel the pressure of moving out. And parents need to be cognizant of what is happening around their young people. These things are happening because, like I said, in my generation, really, by the time you were 20, you had a level of independence. But that is because the world is not the way it used to be. Things have changed. And for parents to recognize that actually the challenges that our young people are going through are totally different. The social space is actually controlling everything that they do, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because that social aspect is key for every human development and every human growth. But parents need to be cognizant of the challenges that the young people are having. So having open conversations, having that time to connect, hear them. Sometimes you want to actively just listen to them. They will tell you a myriad of things, and sometimes allow them to educate you. Because sometimes we are not, we are busy fending for the children, bringing the bread home, and we need to find housing for them. We are overall just trying to create that space for them to allow them to grow. But sometimes there are things we have missed out. Let us become vulnerable as parents to allow our young people to also educate us. Allow them to tell us what their challenges are and how it works. I have a daughter and I have a son, and they are constantly educating me, especially on social media, I must confess, on social media and how it works. And the things that are going on the social media forums, and how it is and what it means, and the language that is used in there. But before you get there, you really need to befriend your children. And you really need to connect with them. Sometimes our holidays are full of activities, but even if we have these fun activities going on around us, we need to have that one-on-one time with each and every child. And because the developmental stages of our children are all different, allocate a specific time to a specific child. If this is the 21 to 25-year-old, allocate that time. Allow them to educate you. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Parents, sometimes we are helicopter. We know it all. We do it all, and we know how best it is done. that myth needs to be busted, because we need to allow our 21-year-olds or 22, 25 years to educate us and tell us what their challenges are. Then we can actually work with them, because we have the wisdom, and sometimes they have the information, but we have the wisdom, because we have walked the path of life. Okay. and we know and understand these challenges. Then allow them we work with them in their journey, so that we can be able to assist them, and even have them, even when they have these goals they want to achieve and they have not come to pass, then we need to know that we need to encourage them and tell them, by the way, yes, you have not achieved this at this time, maybe you can shelve it at this moment, and we can pursue that which is working. At a certain point we can come back to this goal and probably achieve it, or we need to have the internal locus of evaluation. How does this develop in our young people? Is now we open our world for them to get to understand that there are some things that they can do that will affect them in the future. The 21 to 25, all the way to 30 is a crucial time. This is when you can be able to, sometimes we are not, at this point we are not married, we don't have children, we don't have so many responsibilities. We can actually save our money. Instead of gratifying our impulses of being there and being seen, we can actually invest in our spaces. No matter how little money, investment is never too little. Right. We can start learning about money. We can teach our children about money. We can teach them about how to become independent financially. There are a myriad of topics that we can be able to address with the young people, to redirect them. And all this information is, information is also powerful, so we need to help them tap into the right information, and so that they can be able to move in the right direction. Afterwards they can now be able to see the fruits of what they have be able to invest.
Benedict, allow me to come back to what you have touched on, and I don't know if Ken also felt it. Keep talking to us. Nelly Edwards, I see you have Nelly Andrews, pardon me, has just joined us, and quite a powerful comment and feedback I'm just about to share with the viewer. You mentioned in our 20s, and I know the viewers are thinking, especially in Nairobi and the cities, most of us now do have children. Okay. All right. Most of us now are battling those responsibilities maybe in the other centuries did not exist. So I want to be very intentional. And Kennedy, allow me again to go back to Benedict. I know you've been quiet for a while, but I'm coming to you. To talk to a single mom. Yes. Who has the fear of missing out on her further studies. Fear of missing out on a proper life, because she's spending a lot of her money on the child. All right, as we speak, it's pushing her to do certain things. How can she deal with this overwhelming fear of missing out? Because for some reason her 20s should not have this number of responsibilities, but it sure does. Yes. How can she handle it? Because these are the people who are now suicidal. Yeah? And the addictions. Yes. Well, is there a better way? Because now motherhood is different. Is there a better way for this single mother who's watching this morning in her 23, 24, 25 to actually, come out of this and be patient through it? Yes. Okay.
I do realize that in your early 20s, you shouldn't have the responsibility probably of having a child and, taking care of a young family. For example, you are a single mother and the pressure is on. There is so much there's so much that comes with motherhood. But already that in itself, we need to appreciate that it can actually be a challenge, and it is a challenge. And sometimes we need to take a step back and look at our lives. Already there is that demarcation that is already there. I am already a parent. My peers are not parents. So accepting yourself in your own space, saying, this is now my life. I have another person who is depending on me, and I must give them the very best that I can. They are good. Okay, of course there is that challenging part, but there is also a good part that you are now a young mother. First of all, the instinct, the natural instinct of motherhood, when it kicks in also with responsibility. So you tend to become very responsible at a very young age.
So that's positive.
Yes, so that is positive, because we need to look at our situation and accept that it has already happened. We're never getting rid of this child. You know, we're not throwing it as in it just didn't come to visit and it's going back where it came. This child is coming and it's staying, and it is going to be with us for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
Can we accept that? Can we accept our stage of where we are right now, that we are already parents, you know? And when we accept that, then we are able to move with that acceptance. In fact, when you go out with your friends and you have this specific time, probably you need to set out, because right now, as a young mother, you can't go out as often as you used to.
Yeah, so you're missing out. The fear of you're missing out.
So, of course, there is that fear and anxiety you have. What are my peers doing? Really, they have developed their careers. Here I am stuck with a child. Now we need to now be very intentional with our time. Actually, we need to be very protective with our time. We need to see how much time we need to put in this child and be intentional on our career development. Because also that requires time. Are you able to get help at some point in time so that you can be able to go out and work? And now you become more intentional with what you do with your money.
All right.
You see?
Yes.
But socially, now we need to have that self-talk. I am not the same as the other people. I am Irene, I am Josephine, I am Bernadette, and this is now my life. Can I come to terms with that? It's the reality. The pressure is there, but how do we sieve that pressure?
Sieving it.
Yes, sieving
Again,
it. So that
perception.
we sieve this information so that we are able to take that which is beneficial to us, and the other ones we can actually say, now this one we can do without.
Amazing.
Yes.
That's how we again start to strike that balance.
Yes.
Allow me to appreciate as we are wrapping up, and of course Ken is putting together a lot and a very powerful closing remark there. So Nelly Andrews, good morning. How are you doing? Thank you very much for tuning in and streaming live on Facebook. Appreciating our guests as well for the input they have on this conversation. And Nelly says, we all know that social media doesn't provide a very well-rounded picture of people's lives. My advice would be, for one, to stop paying too much attention to what others are doing. And she's just echoing what we have said. Nelly seems like a young person, and this coming from a young person is good. You don't put too much attention to that, because ultimately you said it's going to distract you from actually becoming. And of course, Esther Wanyua Kagombe says, wow, you do it so flawlessly. Is this a familiar name to you?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
She says, proud of you, Benna, making mom proud. Keep shining.
Thank you.
Please say good morning. That's a very special one.
Good morning, Wanya. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for being here, and thank you for the comments. Really appreciate that.
Beautiful. So Honorable Cliff Aboki, good morning, sir. How are you? Thank you for your feedback. There's a very insightful conversation there. We hope to, of course, change your mindset. So, of course, Paul Kenywa says, you young guys are going through a lot these days. We're getting a lot of confirmations that young people need these conversations more. And Brian Okech Amwai, good morning, says, being young nowadays has become a burden. That's sad to read, very sad. It is a heavy load. Then you meet people who tell you, because you are in your 20s, whatever stress you're going through, you have brought it upon yourself, because according to them, you should not be stressed. Yes, that is what Brian is saying. But you are trying to make it out and things do not seem to be working out. Time is running and you are slugging. So you want to comment on this as well. Ken, you have something to say? I know I only have like 3 minutes to close this. But Brian is saying, and I think this is something personal he's experiencing, it has become a burden. You go through something, you said reach out and talk to someone, but when you talk to someone, they say you're too young to be stressed.
I think that's one of the challenges we face, that the boy child faces in the 21st century. Because at the end of that, there is that cultural disposition that the boy child is in. But because I also mentioned about lack of mentorship. Because now there are people, instead of someone understanding your situation from your perspective, they are taking it from theirs. And at the end of the day, as a psychologist, she will tell you, you cannot help someone if you are not willing to step into their shoe. You can only, such cases can only be handled that way. So my advice to him is, if you get such, when someone rebukes you, do not give up. Do not develop resentment against yourself. Move to the next person. Identify, there will always be someone who will listen. Just keep the spirit and fight on. I don't know if you may allow me to mention something. I wanted to mention something on parenting.
Yes.
I think as we are talking about FOMO,
yes.
I would also like to mention that we also have parents who are also suffering from FOMO. The desire to take the kids to this school, the desire to live in this place, you know, such kind of things. And the consequence of that is the child that suffers. Because you realize, because of that FOMO, today, most parenting, and I think I can say this without fear of contradiction, is more focused on provision as opposed to supervision. So that's also something that we need to look in as parents, so that we need to create time and find that balance.
All right.
And I think if I may close.
Yes, very briefly, because I think my director is going through a FOMO of missing out on the next segment.
So for me, on relationships, which are some of the greatest causes of mental illness and some of these breakdowns, find your equal based on your currencies, because you must identify the value that you have that you can present in that relationship. Find someone who is willing to give you an opportunity to become the best version of yourself. Not someone who is going to change you. Like she said, you are this type, and then they want you to become this person. And I'll use a very crude quote as I close.
Will I allow a crude quote?
No, it's not very crude. There is someone who said, if you like, it was said, it's reference to the boy child. If you like big women, in quotes, don't find a small one and try to fatten them like it's a bull you want to slaughter. Just take your time and be patient.
That did sound crude for a second, but I think we understood as Africans. Just 1 minute, and of course you'll close the show for me. The best I could do is smile and go for a break. Benedict.
All right. Thank you so much, even for being here, and even to talk about these issues. These are issues that are actually happening in our society. The best we can be able to do, and even my parting shot, is that we need to be more understanding. We need to actually really evaluate the challenges that we are going through, and even what is happening around us. Yes, it is true. We need to be more compassionate with each other. We need to be more empathetic with each other. And we have seen in our society, actually some empathy is lacking, so we are not able to understand what others are going through. But this fear, in as much as it has a positive side, but it also has a negative side. So let us always endeavor. We need to be very intentional. Very intentional in the way we do things, so that now we can be able to see and engage our internal locus of evaluation. We are evaluating and see what we can be able to leave out and what is important to us.
Amazing.
So that now this anxiety, we can turn it into a positive and turn our lives around and become very productive and actually achieve our goals.
And I just love how you guys have put all these things into perspective. As always, I say the big conversation needs like 3 hours. But you want to know more of this on their social media platforms, we'll have their names, right there. So follow them, reach out to them. But this segment, and of course with my director, allow me to take a short break. Coming in, as always, your favorite segment of the Aspirant Forum. Are you aspiring to be someone where you are in your 20s, but you have some sort of FOMO? You think, when I become a politician, I will be missing out on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things? Well, let's beat that by turning that anxiety to positivity. But for now, take this message, run with it, and make a change. I'll be right back. This is The Morning Drive.